Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be making an acrylic and bubblegum bead keychain. Here's a photo of the project we'll be making. Let's get started. Okay, so you might have seen a few extra things in the list of supplies that was just posted, but we'll get to that in a moment. Here I'm going to be using glitter from CNS Glitter. I'm going to be using Ava, which is a beautiful silver, and Amanda Gorman, which is a gorgeous hot pink. I also have a dual-sided silicone brush tip. It doesn't need to be dual-sided. I just like the silicone because the resin doesn't cure to it. I've got my bubblegum beads. I also have some mixing sticks and cups, as well as a barbecue lighter. You can use a candle lighter as well. Anyone like this will work. I also have my UV resin light handy for this. This is the flashlight kind. You certainly don't need it. You can use one of these regular nail lamps. They work great, and I'm going to use this as we go along anyway, along with pliers and my acrylic blank. You'll also want your general keychain hardware on hand. So we're going to start by taking your acrylic blank and removing the paper backing. Now it is paper backed on both sides. I only remove it from the front side during this process. And keep in mind, if you're doing something that's not a keychain or dual-sided, you want to make sure that you're working in reverse. So I'm just going to remove the paper here. And I do, like I said, leave that back side on in the beginning for now. It protects the back while I work. And then I'm going to take the sanding block and I'm going to scuff up the surface of the entire acrylic. I want to take that shine away off the acrylic. It's really not taking it away, although it's roughing up the surface so that our resin has something to adhere to. If you don't do this, you could risk the resin piece literally coming off in one chunk. If it was to get bent or dropped or left in uncontrolled temperatures. So just make sure to take your time and do the whole surface well. I am just using a fingernail like buffer here. I like them because they're small and easy to use on my acrylics. So once you're done sanding, you want to take some rubbing alcohol and a coffee filter and clean this off really well. Get all the dust and debris. I personally like to use coffee filters as they leave less lint, or for me, I don't get any lint versus using a paper towel. And then in my measuring cups or my little plastic disposable cups, I'm going to add my UV resin. And I add the UV resin to the cup first and then the glitter so that I just have better control of the consistency of what I want to put on my acrylic. So you also want to keep your resin out of direct sunlight, like working in front of a window. Try to keep it covered because it will start to cure on you. Okay, to this resin, I'm going to be adding that really pretty silver Ava from CNS Glitter, and there is a link down in the description. And I'm going to start with just a small amount, because remember that less, you can always add more, you can't take it away. And you want to make sure you stir really well, getting all of the glitter coated well with the resin. This silver is going to be applied on the acrylic here to the bottom of the ring. Now, because this is a keychain and I want to make sure that this hole stays clear, I'm going to use this little pink keyhole plug. I purchased it from Bird's Nest. I'll link it down below for you, as well as a discount code. And because it's a little cone shape, I can't lay this piece flat because of that tip. So I'm just going to prop it up on some medicine cups and allow me to have a surface to work around here. And because I've let this resin sit for a minute, I am going to stir it back up because the glitter will start to settle down on the bottom, and you certainly don't want that. I'll put you in a little closer so you can see here as we start to apply the resin to the acrylic. I do like to have this a little thicker normally, like as far as glitter to resin consistency, but I think this is going to work out really well, and I really wanted the light to be able to penetrate the resin and really show off the sparkle of how pretty this is. And I'm just going to work in small amounts and in small sections and work myself around the acrylic. And as I get close to this plug, I don't need to worry about filling it all the way in there. I'll come back with a silicone brush and really make sure that it's in there all the way around. So I do just want to make sure that I kind of have the same consistency and amount of resin all the way around. And you know, resin self-levels, so that's going to help out here. But I don't want to go really thin in some areas and thicker in others. I also want to be sure that I'm getting coverage all the way to the edges of the acrylic and not leaving any exposed acrylic. I'm going to just keep filling in along the rest of this ring here, and I want to try to keep a nice straight line where the two colors will meet right along where this diamond is right here. So just take your time, get that straight line, and then you're going to want to go in with your silicone brush and work on that area where the plug is and make sure that you have it all filled in and that you have all resin all the way around pulled all the way to the side. It just takes just a little bit of maneuver here with it. And I'm making sure that the edges are all covered. You'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, I slide that silicone tip right into the cap of my UV resin. That's just so no light hits it and it starts curing on there and I don't have to clean it as much. And I'm going to hit it just real gently with my light to start kind of flash curing it. And then I realize that that resin is moving just a little bit right where the diamond is. So I'm not sure how cured it is, so I want to go ahead and check and see if I can clean it off here just a bit. And as you see, it is set up and my brush is just going right underneath of it. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to take a Q-tip and just clean off that extra that I kind of smeared on there just slightly. And that way I can just go ahead and cure it. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of time with the UV flashlight here and kind of get that top coat and the resin to start curing, kind of like what I like to call a flash cure. Once I've done my flash cure with my UV flashlight here, I like to do a water cure. So all I'm going to do is remove the little plug here that I had in there to keep the hole nice and clean. And then I'm going to get some water. I like to just use some cups for small acrylic pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and just put this piece in the water and cure it with my UV light. I like to do about 30 to 60 seconds, just depending how thick the resin is that I applied. Now what the water cure is going to do is it's going to allow a nice hard finish on your resin. Sometimes either your mixing ratios are off and you put a little too much glitter or colorant or whatever, and you get left with this tacky kind of feeling resin, and the water cure will resolve that. So I just take it from the water, and I do use a tea towel, like a lint-free kitchen tea towel, just to dry it off. And I'm going to check it and make sure that it's not tacky and that it's ready to proceed to the next step. So now that that first part is cured and ready, we'll do a complete cure at the end, but we're going to move on with our resin and our next glitter color, which is that really pretty hot pink. It is called Amanda Gorman, and it is linked down below. I typically use a chunky as well when I'm making these acrylics, but this time I chose 2 fine cuts, and this one is so bright and pretty. I am going to use a bit more of this. I do like it to be a little thicker to start with, and I don't want it to be really transparent, as there is going to be a decal that goes on top of this pink part only. So you can see it is much thicker than the silver was. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to scoop all of this out of here. I just made a small amount for this area, and I'm going to be sure to get all of it out of the cup. And then I'm going to just begin pushing it around, making sure that I push all the way to the edges, because just like regular resin, as it begins to cure, it retracts a little and will pull away from your edges, just like on a cup from your top and your bottom rim. So I'm just going to use my silicone tool, and I'm slowly going to go around and make sure that I'm getting it all the way to the edge. Now I can already see, as I'm spreading this around, that I see some little air bubbles starting to kind of pop as they rise to the top. And so once I get this all spread around, I'm going to be sure that I take the barbecue lighter or candle lighter, whichever you call it or use it for, and I'm going to make sure that I go over the surface really well to get any of those bubbles that I incorporated by stirring so vigorously with that thicker amount of glitter to come to the surface and release for me. Just be sure as you begin to use that open flame that you move very quickly and don't hold it in one spot. So you saw that I began to cure that with the light and then quickly remembered, wait, I've got too many bubbles here. So I'm going to just quickly hit it with the torch. And then I'm just going to use that UV flashlight again, and I'm going to do that flash cure, making sure that I take away any of that liquidy state from the resin before we move into doing another water cure. So give it just a moment and make sure that you're getting a good flash cure on it so that you can move forward. So again, we're just going to get that cup of water and we're going to dunk it in here and do a water cure for about 30 seconds. So once your time is up on your cure, I'm going to remove it and make sure that it's cured enough to move forward. And as I'm drying it off, I notice there is a little lip here where the jump ring hole is, where we're going to be attaching it to our keychain. So I do want to make sure that I sand that off and during my last step, because I don't want to leave that little bump there. And I'll show you how I get rid of sand marks if I do have to make a repair. Now we're ready to move on to the other side, and I'm going to start by removing this paper. But I want to zoom in and show you how beautiful it is from one side, and then when you turn it over and it's technically under the resin, you can see how gorgeous this sparkle is on these colors. So we're going to be placing a vinyl decal in that pink area, cut out of a beautiful little glitter vinyl. But if you get these from Zindi, you get the cut file, and when you get them, don't change it at all, because if you do, then it's not going to fit appropriately in the area that you want it to. So we'll just upload it and cut it from your machine just as it is. I'm going to be using, because this is glitter vinyl, I'm going to be using strong grip transfer tape. This one happens to be Cricut. I like it for glitter vinyl. There's things that I don't like it for, of course, it's too strong, but it works really well for the glitter vinyl. So I'm just going to push it down and I'm going to rub my scraping tool across it just so that it adheres well, and then we'll go ahead and apply this decal. I do have a bit of a time sometimes if my blade is too deep or my force is too deep on my machine, so I have to work at it just a bit to get it to transfer greatly. And then I'm going to use parchment paper, and that just allows me to line this up as straight as possible and get it adhered exactly where it's supposed to be. So I just push it down, part of it, and then I lift it up and remove that parchment paper. Your adhesives won't stick to the parchment paper. And then I'm just going to burnish this on. I do it real gently at first, and then I kind of just give it a rub down to make sure it's adhered on there really well. When removing the transfer tape from your design, you want to make sure you remove it low and close to your design and not be lifting, because that can cause your vinyl to start lifting as well. Now here, we're just going to be doing that same exact process of putting in the plug, setting on the measuring cups and applying the resin again. So I'm just going to speed this section up for you and let you watch. If you have questions, as always, drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Done curing, I'm going to take it out of the water and we're going to dry it off really good and give it an overview. And that's the back side. Here is the front side. It's just beautiful and shiny. I love the way it looks. And if you'll notice that here on the corner where the diamond meets the ring, I do have a tiny little, kind of like a spillover right there that I want to fix. And the little drop up on the pink is water, so it dries off in a moment. But I want to fix that, as well as this little bump here where the jump ring is going to go through. And I'm just going to take my craft knife and I'm going to score right along the little edges, kind of scoring it from the back. And then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to score it from the front as well. I'm just kind of loosening up that resin that's there so that we can remove it. And then I'll take my little jewelry pliers and I'm going to grab a hold and just kind of wiggle, just kind of bending it, not using a ton of force, and it'll just kind of pop right off. You see, there I have it off and there it's no longer there, and it's a nice clean look like the other side. So I don't want any resin in those areas. So now this little bumpy side here, I want to get rid of that lip, and I'm just going to take that same little sander that I used in the beginning and I'm just going to sand that off here. Just sand it smooth to where it's flush and you no longer feel that little bump. Now I only got it on one side when I was doing this, so I only need to fix one side. And once I sand this off really well, I'm going to wipe it with alcohol and a coffee filter to get all the dust and residue off of it before I do the final repair on it. And you can see now that it's hazy and cloudy, and that's just because I sanded it. But we want to fix that. And you can see I have a tiny bit of resin here on the tip of my brush, the one that I had stuck in the lid earlier, and I'm just going to wipe that in this area in a very, very thin, easy layer. And that's just going to seal in the scratch marks and give it that finished look without having that ridge there anymore. And then I'll just take my little light here and I'm going to give it a flash cure. Before we give this its complete water bath cure. So a complete water bath cure for me is 3 to 4 minutes in the water underneath my light, and I just put it off to the side while I continue working on the rest of the project. And I'll push the button a couple times. Mine turns on for 60 seconds at a time, so that's what I do. It's time now for my second favorite part of this project, and that's the bubblegum beads. And I can't really decide on what colors I want to use, but I know I want to use the gray and the pink for sure. I'm just not sure on the opalescent or the heart one, so I've got to make that decision. This is just elastic bracelet cording. I get it in 1mm and 0.75mm. Again, I'll have it linked below, as well as the website where I purchase my bubblegum beads. And these are 20mm bubblegum beads. Okay, we're also going to want to get our keychain hardware out. I have jump rings as well as like the keychain ring and attachment, as well as a swivel lobster claw, and all of these items will be listed below with a link of where to purchase them, where I purchase them the cheapest, in the description. I do have about 16 to 18 inches of cord. I have my keychain, and I'm going to go ahead and get started assembling this. So now I need to attach my tassel. That's how I start all of my keychains. I'm just going to attach a jump ring, an open clasp jump ring on here so that it has a little more dangle. And then I'm going to take the two ends and I'm going to loop them right through that ring I just put on and just make a little loop knot. So I like to put the ring on because I like them to dangle. I used to put them through this little piece right here, but I really like more movement with it. I'm also going to get some small spacers out. I don't have to use these, but since this is a super blingy keychain, I'd like to. And now I'm going to start threading my thread, and I noticed here that there was a small crack in my bead. I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you look closely, you'll see it, and I decided to swap that out with a new bead. So I'm just going to take the two beads and I'm going to feed them through with both of the strings at the same time so that you're feeding it all the way on, and I'm going to push it on down, and that little knot we made is going to sit right at the base of that first bead. So now we're just going to continue on threading on a spacer in between each bead. I do like to put my decorative bead in the middle, and then once we get to here, we're ready to put on our keychain hardware. And all I do is loop both leads directly through the very bottom of the chain. And now we're going to secure this on. So what we're going to do is just start going in reverse. We're going to feed them back through from top to bottom. We're not going to go all the way through, but we are going to go through the first two beads. I take that back. We're going to go through 3 beads because we want our actual knot of the bead to be hidden. So you see I pinch it really tight and hold on to those strings real tight to allow room for the extra elastic to go right through. So the tighter you hold it, the more space you'll have in the center of that bead for the threading. So now you have it reversed back down through the top gray one and the middle spacer, and now we're going to go one more time into this bead because I want the knot to ultimately be inside this bead. If I tie it right here, then it's going to be visible to the eye, and I don't want to be able to see that. So I'm just going to feed these two right through here, and we'll start our knot process. So now we just want to secure and tighten up this extra. So we're going to just grab the cord and the keychain ring and pull opposite of each other so that it tightens up and takes out the slack. And then to tie this off, I simply start like if I'm tying my shoes. And I'm going to do one just simple single tie. And I want to tie it as tight as physically possible. And you see the strings are in between the decorative bead and the second spacer. Then flip over your project, and now you're going to do each of these ties opposite. So if it's going over the first time, I want you to bring it under on the second time, and make sure that you are pulling as snug as possible each time. So we went over the first one, so this time the left is going to be under, and we're going to tie it nice and snug again. So now your knot is nice and tight, and I just want to make sure that the knot I created goes inside of that middle bead, and that way everything will sit flush together. So now I'm just going to cut off the excess, and I want you to cut it as close to the knot as you can, but don't get too close that you accidentally snip the knot. So I just kind of bend it and clip it pretty close. And now I can still see some itty bitty little strings there, and so if you just pull just a little bit, your ends will go right inside. So now that my beads are thread and secure, I'm going to put on some final hardware that I like to add. This is a swivel lobster claw. You don't have to add it, but I like adding it, and I put it just directly right onto the keychain hardware itself with the jump rings. And then I have a little lobster claw bead. It's just a little charm I like to add since this is a super blingy little keychain. I thought it would go really well. And now both pieces are done and we're ready to assemble the acrylic onto the keychain. And all we need to do that is a jump ring right here. So I'm going to pick the largest jump ring that I have that comes in this set. And ultimately I could use like a little lobster claw clasp if I wanted to. I just happen to like these. The lobster claws are easy and you can clip them kind of anywhere you want, but I like the jump rings. So I'm just again going to open the jump ring and apply it to my acrylic and then put it onto the chain of the hardware. Again, you can attach this anywhere you'd like to. I'm just going to make sure that it's real secure and all the jump rings are closed up tightly. And it's complete. I'm really happy with this project and I hope that you will make one, and we'll see you again here on the channel soon.